greener futures, building sustainability into MedTech.
Thank you, Rachel, for a nice introduction, and thank you to the startups for a burst of energy and inspiration, in essence. But we're here to talk about sustainability. Healthcare is one of the industries that has a huge pollution problem because of all the materials for one-time use. So, Oliver, you're the CEO of MedTech Europe. What trends are you observing when it comes to sustainability? Let's start easy.
Okay, thank you very much, Tjasa, and big thanks to MedTech World for having a topic like this at today's event. Sustainability is a topic which started to emerge more and more in the public conversations of our industry. When I first got involved in MedTech 10, 15 years ago, it was fairly marginal discussion of this topic, but in Europe in particular, it's emerged as a bigger and bigger theme in the last 5 to 10 years. Why? Because as you said, whether we like it or not, the healthcare business, MedTech, pharma, hospitals, labs, the whole sector is actually a very big contributor to the ecological impact on our planet. If you look at carbon emissions alone, it's estimated that healthcare accounts for about 5% of all carbon emissions. And within that 5%, about 1/5 comes from our sector. So you might say 1% of all carbon emissions, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually very substantial because that's all carbon emissions from every single industrial sector, every single public sector, every individual, every household. 1% is very substantial. And if you put it differently, that carbon emission impact, if it was a country, it's about the same amount of carbon emissions coming from the entire country of France. So there is a very big contributor to environmental degradation coming from healthcare. And that means it is incumbent upon everyone in healthcare, the medtech industry included, to play our part to try and reduce that impact. Within MedTech Europe, which is the trade association representing this industry at European level towards the outside world, we put in place a number of actions to help guide our members and the wider industry about concrete actions they can take to be part of the solution to the planetary crisis. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because the industry is under increasing pressure and expectation from a variety of external sources to contribute. There's European and national regulation, especially in the last 5 years, which is pushing us towards greener products, processes, and practices. We see green criteria emerge increasingly in public tenders, not just in countries like the Nordic countries, but many more in Europe. We see the green ESG investor climate wax and wane over the years. Right now it's a little bit milder than it was a few years ago, but I think it's just a matter of time. And last but not least, the people we employ, the younger generation of workers, the talent pool that we're trying to tap into to recruit and retain for some of the most exciting, innovative areas, they are increasingly conscious about the planet, they care deeply about it, and they will choose their employer and their industry based on how sincere they think we are about this challenge. So it is a right thing to do, but it is also an existential thing to get right if we want to continue thriving in the years ahead.
You used a very specific word, and that is that the industry is under increased pressure. What about encouragement? You know, like if you're buying a car today, you can either go for a hybrid car, which kind of makes more sense because we don't have electric machines for charging everywhere. But at the same time, hybrid cars are kind of the most expensive ones because you have subsidies for electric cars, or you can still say, well, you know, I can't save the planet, so I'm just going to go for the ordinary car, which is the cheapest. So how does that translate or look like in MedTech? How much encouragement do companies have to go after sustainability?
Thank you for the question, Tjasa. We were chatting just before this session, and it's an incredibly relevant question because if you take the example of cars, right? For the most part, cars are consumer goods. They're bought by private citizens, and you can choose your price point, everything from a fancy Tesla to a Fiat Panda and everything in between. It's clear in the 21st century, a growing number of private citizens have the means and the will to pay extra for a green product because they want to do good, they want to project good, they want to seize the technological opportunities that exist to have a lower impact from driving. In most parts of the world, and certainly in Europe, healthcare is not like the consumer goods market. We cannot just put on the market a fancier, shinier, greener category of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics and assume that healthcare systems will pay a premium for that, like consumers will pay a premium for a Tesla. Healthcare systems don't work like that in this part of the world where you have social care models and limited healthcare budgets are trying to keep up with the healthcare needs of today, let alone those of the next decades when demographics are going to shrink the tax base and increase the number of people needing care. So there is a chronic pressure on our industry since time immemorial to come with more financially efficient solutions, and that is why tenders have tended to be won, unfortunately, by products which can compete the most on price, not always in terms of value. And so that's the challenge, right? We could invest in a whole range of greener tech, greener medtech, but who's going to pay for that? I don't have faith that the tender authorities are magically going to pay us a price premium for greener products, even though they want greener products, even though they're starting to introduce green criteria in the tenders. So your question indeed becomes, what mechanisms can governments and other public sector actors provide to help share the risk, to help us invest in greener technologies, just as, you know, citizens might generate benefit from tax credits and other rebates if they put solar panels on their roof. I think that's where the solution needs to lie so that the companies can control their costs and still respond to the green expectations of society without exploding health budgets. Mm-hmm. It's a very easy thing to say, extremely difficult to do in practice, but that's actually the challenge ahead of us because this expectation for a greener healthcare is not going away.
Mm-hmm. Oliver, you're a board member of Healthcare Without Harm, which is an NGO seeking to transform healthcare worldwide so it reduces the environmental impact. How can sustainability become the source for innovation rather than just this annoying thing that makes your business more expensive and harder to run?
Absolutely, thank you. So Healthcare Without Harm Europe is the European branch of a global environmental NGO committed to trying to reduce the impact of healthcare on the planet. I'll say transparently, our industry and the private sector has not always agreed with everything Healthcare Without Harm has to say. We get into very difficult conversations sometimes about chemicals in products and the opportunities for reducing packaging and whether it's appropriate or not to move away from single-use devices into reusables and reprocessed ones. But I believe that we're only going to get past that if we talk to each other and work together. And what I'm seeing with my board mandate on Healthcare Without Harm Europe is there is genuine will to find ways to work constructively with the private sector, whether that's us, biotech, or pharma. Some of the biggest opportunities I see in Europe, looking at Healthcare Without Harm Europe's network, is there is a growing network of hospitals in Europe whose management or procurers really do want to contribute to a greener future. I mentioned the tender space. Right now, the tender space is one full of noise. One hospital's tender preferences may be wildly different from another hospital's tender preferences, or two hospitals might have effectively the same tender preferences, but what they ask us to measure and report is completely fragmented. And so part of the challenge companies face is not a will to delight the customer, it's not a lack of will to try and win the tenders, it's how do I pursue green projects, measure their impact and report their impact in a way which is going to work with government regulators, financial authorities, and the tenders. So to answer your question, what I believe that hospital networks in Healthcare Without Harm or any other part of the world can really do is put their heads together and decide which green criteria do we as hospitals care about the most? Is it energy? Is it carbon? Is it waste? Is it chemicals? Whatever it may be, unpack why and go after the ones which will actually make a difference. And then ask the industry to measure and report the same things in the same way. Will it put pressure on companies? Yes, absolutely. But at least there'll be some harmonization of what it is they're expected to do, and we'll save a ton of energy and time and heartache trying to keep up with a very fragmented landscape. So that's an example of something constructive I think hospitals could do to help us respond positively to their expectations for greener healthcare.
Mm-hmm. The NHS has committed to becoming net zero by 2040 for direct emissions and by 2045 for emissions it can influence. So the rules or the recommendations in the UK are quite clear. Companies need to submit an evidence of emission data. From 2028, they will have to submit product level life cycle carbon footprint. Which is good in a sense that the rules are clear for MedTech companies, but what are you observing in Europe? Is the European Union following suit? How much differences do you see among the European countries and the requirements for companies working in different markets?
Yeah, for sure. So the NHS Net Zero, which is a couple of years old, was a good example about how the green criteria in tenders are no longer limited to the Nordics, right? So it's clearly spreading, and it's also in public networks like the NHS. Alongside that, as you say, there's been a raft of regulation at national and EU level. In the last 5 years, alongside the COVID pandemic, the European Commission actually proposed many, many dozens of pieces of environmental legislation that are most of them reached the end of the lawmaking process, and there might not be as many coming in the next couple of years, but the ones that were negotiated are now in the implementation phase. They touch chemicals, they touch materials, they touch packaging, they touch batteries, they touch things like recyclability and reusability and repairability of all products, not just healthcare. So this is transversal regulation that's expecting every single industrial sector to do its part, and that includes us, by the way. To keep up with that, one of the things we did, and it's on our public website since approximately May, a lot of what we do is really reserved for our member companies only, but every once in a while we put something out there in the public domain for the entire industry. We commissioned a report to the Boston Consulting Group called Decarbonizing Healthcare, how a competitive medtech sector can contribute. And it's designed to look at this very diverse industry and find very tangible, concrete actions that medtech companies who want to be part of the solution should take today, next year, in 5 years, in 15 years, based on the ease of moving quickly, the complexity of regulatory hurdles, the state of science. And what we find when you're trying to respond to a regulator or an NHS or whoever it may be, and if you really do have a conversation about your total ecological footprint, there are some things you can do and should be doing, like your competitors are probably doing right now. Probably the easiest quick wins, because they are in your control and it's just a matter of will, is to really exhaust the possibilities for investing in renewable energy and renewable heating. A number of companies do this already, right? And they showcase it in their sustainability reports. But that's a classic example of a Scope 1 emission, which is very much in the company's control. Unfortunately, those Scope 1 emissions are accounting for only 5 to 10% of the average medtech company's total footprint. The vast majority of our impact actually comes from Scope 3, which is the upstream and downstream supply chain. So the most important work, but also some of the hardest work to do, is to work with raw material and component suppliers to try and find greener materials which are available, affordable, which will comply with our rigorous safety and effectiveness regulations. and see if we can transition to them in an organized manner without blowing the bank. The other piece, which is also very exciting, is to work with the downstream part of the supply chain. The hospitals, the transporters, the waste disposal authorities, to see if we can work together on finding more financially efficient and ecologically efficient ways of managing the healthcare system. About 20% of our emissions in Scope 3 are coming from the use phase. Another 20% is coming from the so-called end-of-life phase, so the waste collection and management, and about 10% are coming from packaging. If you advance little by little on all of those fronts and not just the energy and heating, that would be a good example of medium-term actions that companies can be pursuing to at least show that they're trying to be part of the solution and to do it in a collaborative way within the healthcare system, rather than see it as just the responsibility of individual device suppliers.
Mm-hmm. We have a few minutes left, so I'm just gonna finish our discussion with a question on what are you excited about in the field? On the one hand, we have high expectations from AI, but at the same time, there's also a realization coming out about the negative environment impact that the data centers required for AI have on the drinking water consumption, noise pollution in the areas where they're built, and we know that the AI industry is only booming. So where do you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Thank you. That's a challenging question, right? Because yes, some of the most exciting innovation in MedTech has been coming out for years, right? From the software realm. And within that software realm, everyone's talking about AI, Gen AI, and what's next to come. But yeah, despite the increasing widespread use of AI and the impressive levels of investment into AI companies and data centers, this stuff has a massive impact on the planet. And we are not yet seeing substantial government regulation of it, nor substantial taxation of it to compensate for the ecological impact of AI. And so companies which are leveraging this technology with good intention and goodwill to make their operations more efficient or to advance healthcare are in turn increasing their ecological footprint. But with all of that attention and public and private money that's going into AI, surely we must be able to find something which can be part of the incentives packages for companies trying to go greener. That would be my personal hope. Clearly there's the interest, there's the will. We just need to find a way to help those companies which are genuinely trying to green their operations and the wider healthcare system to do it without breaking the bank. And if you look at AI, there's a ton of money floating around, so some of it's got to be shared for us.
So what's missing is a little bit more carrots, not just sticks. Oliver, thank you so much for this discussion.
Thank you, Tjasa.